DNA, evidence and identification. We all know that DNA takes how long? If we all watch TV, DNA takes 8 minutes, right? Yeah, DNA takes 8 minutes on TV. We've seen it. I've NCIS, CSI, all of them. I've seen it. 8 minutes. That's not the truth. Okay, when I pay a private lab, we have a very, very, very good private lab that works with a lot of government labs that we pay for these cases. It still takes them 3 to 4 months. The government labs are 8 months plus, and it depends because you might fall down in the queue as you go. So this is a very slow process for sure. Okay, scientific identification, fingerprints. All of us are fingerprint trained. FBI qualified. I am sitting for the IAI, can't even say it today. Fingerprint examiner. I've had the years of experience and stuff. They finally accepted me to test, so I'm going to test for that, which is the top certification for fingerprint examiner, and we do that in-house. Dental, Dr. Kim Luck is our odontologist who will come in and do dental exams for us. We do DNA through NAMUS FBI. We use Bodhi a lot, and they're the ones that work with those other labs to get information in the system. And then radiological identification is another one we'll go over in a second, and implants. So we'll go over and review those for scientific identifications. So first of all, fingerprints, right? If you look at the print on the left, print on the right, even this is a pretty easy one. You can start to see similarities, but if you look where the arrows are, you can see minutiae similarities. Now, there's a lot of training. I'm not going to teach fingerprints for the night, but give you a basic rundown of what we do to compare an antemortem print. Like when you go to get a driver's license at the DMV, you give your right index finger. We have access legally to be able to get those. We also work with our partners at the FBI on a regular basis where we send them prints. They search their database for us and get us an answer back. They are fantastic to work with. And we get fingerprint IDs regularly. This is the quickest, fastest, and easiest way for us to get IDs quickly on most cases. Other cases get a little bit harder. So, dental. This is something similar. This is only one part of what the forensic dentist would use, but the x-rays, right? So on one side, you're looking at antemortem dental x-rays, and on one side, you're looking at postmortem dental x-rays. Now, these are pretty easy looking ones. These here, you can see that the fillings are pretty similar. There's a lot going on. This is a pretty easy ID. But that's not always the case. Many times you get down into the root formations, things like that. That's why we have forensic dentists who really know that is their specialty to get involved in that and make that decision. Okay? DNA, of course, we talked about, takes far longer than TV would love to have you believe. Now, radiological. What this could mean on someone like skeletal remains, we don't have fingerprints, maybe we don't have teeth. You know, we had an individual a few years ago, the way he died, we never found a tooth. Not one. We found about a third of his skull. And we started looking at, does he have old fractures that we could go back to and just note and see if we could compare back to medical records and stuff like that. So this is something that we want to know about. And then implants. Who has metal? Anyone here have metal in them? Yeah. So if you've had a plate, you've had a replaced hip, a replaced joint, something along those lines, those actually have serial numbers on them, and we can take those out and look at those, track back to the manufacturer, and then track back to the hospital. It is a process, a very protected process, but coroners are the ones who can get that information. And we do have to work back. It starts with the company that made them. They will tell you which hospital it went to, but they don't know which person it went into. And then you got to go to the hospital records and find out which implant was put into which person. So it's a long drawn out process, but we can find that out.
Okay.
So, yep.
The implants, do they have identifying numbers, for example?
Yes.
So it would be engraved on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a serial number that we can track back to the company. Then the company can say, okay, that serial number set went to XYZ hospital. Then we got to go to XYZ hospital and start working backwards from there. So it is a little bit of a process, but we can find that implant number. It is kind of one of the last ditch things because it does take a while on those. But then other kinds of implants is, do you know anyone with a pacemaker? Right, people have pacemaker. We can pull those pretty quickly, and Medtronic is very receptive and pretty quick on those. They will interrogate them for us and give us information, and we find out, if we hadn't identified, most of those we know who the person is, but it's another thing we can use for identification, going through the process. And that's, the coroners have that legal ability. It's not like everyone off the street can come get this information. You do have to be an actual medical legal death investigating office to get this kind of information. So, now, other ways to generate a lead on someone we don't know. Forensic art, we use a forensic artist to do facial reconstructions to get tips on a decedent that we don't know who they are. Forensic genealogy, which you may have heard about on the news. It's led to several arrests of murderers and things like that. We use it strictly for identification because we're not chasing down who the murderer is, we're chasing down who that person is, who is our decedent. And so we use it for that. And then personal items may give you a clue. So if we're looking around the scene, car accident, whatever, we're going to want to look and see maybe anything that says a possible name that we can start with. If we can't get fingerprints, go to dental and stuff. So we want that information that might give us a clue. And then the location, right? If you're in that house and we have nothing in the house, we could start with maybe it's the owner. Doesn't mean it is, but it at least gives us a tip to start with, okay? So forensic art, this is one of our, that was done a few years ago. This was a homicide about 12 years ago. Well, the homicide was actually 15 years ago. And we identified this individual finally in 2016. And we found just the skull up here, and we went to our forensic artist after about a year and a half and said, we just, DNA, nothing's hitting, nothing's happening. Got this done, put this out to the public, got a detective call out of Colorado Springs, and they're like, hey, I've got a missing person, I think it looks like that. And long story short, his brother was convicted of this. So this was one from years ago, but they were able to put out there, you can't tell eye color from someone who's skeletonized. You can't tell the ear shape. You can't tell the hairstyle. But what you can tell is the structure. So if you look at the nose, you can measure using the bones, well, how big his nose might be, how much his jaw what his jaw may look like. He's got a pretty large jaw kind of protruding on that side. Things like that they can work on. And it's half science where the artist builds with clay all the muscle structure on the skull. They're able to tell where all the muscles attach and build in the approximate size of the muscle. And that gives the basics of the facial structure. Then the artistic side where they add the clay skin layer over. Because they don't know exactly of a shallow scar or something like that. But they add that. So it's a mix of the art and the science. It's a really cool thing. We've had a few of these done, and it's incredible what they can pull off. And this one led to a successful identification. So then forensic genealogy, if you've heard about it on the news, they're tracing back, and they typically get someone's DNA and they go back through the genealogy systems, and sometimes they'll be like, oh, we're in a 12th cousin. Who here knows their 12th cousin? Telling you, most people do not. And so 12th cousins could be generations and generations and generations apart. And so they get in a family line, but then they've got to construct it backwards to see where they fall. This can be 2 days, this can be months. And so our longest one right now has been 6 months. Our shortest one was 2 days, where they were able to find who that person is. So this does take some time, but it's an awesome thing that we're promoting and really trying to use a lot of to find our decedents, who they are, so we can let family know. So they compare DNA to 2 different databases initially, and then they've got ways to do some other things and get into some other databases. And then this will find family members on both sides initially. They will interview members of that family, like 5th and 6th cousins who have no idea. And usually there is no connection. And then try to say, well, I heard about a cousin that went to Colorado. My great-grandma told a story about her cousin moved to Colorado. So then maybe they follow that line of the family down. It's really kind of fascinating work that they do. And then we confirm everything with a scientific identification once we have it needed. Okay? So we had a 1974 case that we used that was pretty impressive. We began this process, Don and I, my chief deputy, did in 2018. We decided this had been an unsolved case for years. They were buried in the Fairplay Cemetery. They were found on Gwinnell Pass in 1974. And they were pretty decomposed. They really couldn't figure out. They had no stuff with them. They don't really know. Looks like they had had a traumatic injury way up in the woods. and never figured it out. So we exhumed this person in 2018 using some of the last members of that team that were alive in 74. One I'm happy to be my father as a posse member. We interviewed the sheriff from that time. He was still alive at that time, gave us an interview, and we were able to get the judge to say, yep, I agree with this, so we exhumed it. And then we collected DNA, we did all sorts of stuff, reburied him, and then started looking for this individual with the new data that we had gathered. Put it in the national databases. So nothing, right? We did this for 2 years. We put DNA through CODIS, all the stuff, nothing, no hits, no missing persons records hitting with DNA. So then in 2020, we're like, well, let's go ahead and it was actually the very end of 19, said, let's start this process. Let's start the genealogy process. This was brand new at the time. And we got a great genealogist we still work with and said, here, go for it. This was 6 months of them working. And they were able to come up, and in October of 2020, we're like, oh, we have this. We've identified this individual, and it was the only individual connecting the two family lines. So we knew it was that individual. Pretty cool information. Notified his daughter, and she's, at the time, was 59 years old, living in another state, and had wondered since she was 14 where he went. What happened to her dad. So pretty cool stuff that we were able to accomplish. So, but this is just gives you an idea of some of the back work that we're doing on and trying to stay cutting edge in the latest forensics in Park County. So we had another case, 2020, unidentified human remains in Lost Creek Wilderness in June of 2020. Hikers found the individual, looked like a potential suicide, but we had nothing. He had removed all semblances of identification out of his backpack, phone broken in every possible imaginable way to make sure that the data couldn't be taken off of it, but numbers that didn't mean anything were left alone. So he had done research. The numbers we had, we were hopeful, oh, there's a number on this part of the phone and this, and called up the manufacturers, and they're like, well, that number is only specific to 1 million parts of the same part that was made. So it doesn't mean anything to us. But all the numbers that could actually lead to the potential identity of the phone were ruined. So he had gone out of his way, unfortunately, to do this. So we had a lot of suspicion about this. But we went out, we went to the public for help, saying, hey, look at these items, what do you think? We got some tips and a lot of stuff that didn't work out. We followed every one of them. And then we got into the genetic genealogy. So we had boots, we had his shorts, we had an Atlanta Braves hat, we had stuff that we were like, okay, this should get close, but we couldn't. So we got into forensic genealogy, and this was our 2-day one, our shortest one. His sister had done the genealogy thing just out of curiosity for something else, and we were able to hit a direct relative that fast, which is rare, but we did. And the family had known he had been suicidal. They know he had been, this was an extreme area he went to, quite a trek out there into the wilderness. And he had told his family he was going to Asia for 5 years. Don't look for him. And this was about a year after he told them that we finally got him identified. So they were pretty startled, but unfortunately they kind of knew something was going on with him, but he had always been kind of a loner. But they've now since come around, and actually it's been able to help them get the closure instead of dragging it out for years on end. So they were able to get that closure from them. So our autopsies are all performed by board-certified forensic pathologists. That's the state requirement, and actually we were doing it prior to the state having this law in effect. And right now we're using the El Paso County Coroner's Office, the doctors that they have down there. They currently have 3, they had 5, they have 3, and they're going to go back to 5. By July, I believe, is when the other 2 are coming in.
Yeah.
And so we use board-certified doctors through the El Paso County Coroner's Office because that's where they are. Hopefully we'll have one coming here someday if we can get a facility built. So mass fatalities, do they happen here very often? No, but it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. We train regularly for these. We try to conduct a full-scale exercise every 2 to 3 years on tabletops every opposite year with all of our partnerships with all of our other responders, fire departments, EMS agencies, search and rescue, other counties who would be helping in these. The federal way money happens is everyone thinks when a big incident comes, FEMA runs in and saves the day. That's not the way it works. If you ask for some of these federal entities, they'll deploy. But if there's no disaster declaration, us taxpayers on Park County are on the hook. These are major expensive teams to come in. So what we have prepared for, I'm not preparing for the 400-person jumbo jet crash. We can't handle that by ourselves in-house. And to think we can is foolish. So what we've prepared for is an up to 30-person transportation crash of some kind. We're talking something along the lines of a bus rollover, okay? Wildfire taking out a particular subdivision. Something like that. That's what we've prepared for. So that cap of ours is 30. We have built to where we can operate that on our own if we have to, but especially with our partners from other entities and agencies can come in and we have the equipment and are prepared to do that. We have a portable morgue building. You'll see down on the left is an example of one of ours that we have. We have our trailer that is built. We rotate the goods in and out of the trailer every year, like body bags and protective equipment and stuff, rotates into our regular supply to be used, so that when you need this trailer, you don't open up the box and everything turns to dust. Because after 9/11, what was found is everyone went out and got mass fatality trailers, mass casualty incident trailers, medical trailers. Everyone went nuts, right? Money was flown out of the federal government after 9/11, and everyone did these trailers. Come along 10 years later, we're getting in the medical trailers, and we're opening up things that are just disintegrating. They have been sitting in the hot, the cold, the hot, the cold, the hot, the cold for so many years that they're no longer any good. So we don't want to stockpile so much stuff that it's not good to us when we need it. So we stockpile just enough that we can rotate them in and out of our regular supply going out on everyday cases, so that everything in that trailer is only a year old. And then it's rotated, used up, new stuff put in, so that we can keep the maintenance of that. So we wrote grants for this and got this a long time ago, so that we can try to, we can handle small mass fatality incidents, okay? So family support, we're big in family support. This is the biggest thing that we do, and I will fight with everybody all day long, anyone, doesn't matter who they are, about supporting our families. Our families and the survivors and friends and witnesses of these incidents need support immediately, and they need it thoroughly. And so a care team has been put together. We modeled after some of the offices in South Carolina who put care teams together, and they are volunteers. We have several of them in the audience here today. You'll see in the blue shirts. And they come out to scenes and they help support families in their worst time. Because whether it's grandpa had a heart attack or brother took his life, those are traumatic to that family in the moment, okay? Either one. And that family needs support at that time, because they don't know what's going to happen next. They're not sure what's happening next. The world is a blur. If you've ever lost somebody, it gets everything around you seems to move very fast while you're moving very slow. So that's what the care team comes out and does. They volunteer for us. We currently have 15. We're in need of one more. We're looking for one more person in Bailey to round out the numbers on the team that we need. But they respond with us to scenes. They support those families. They give them resources. They have a lot of demographic information they gather from them. Some of that can be sitting there and talking with them about the decedent. Some of them can be sitting there and saying not a word, just for being a person there. Other things may be talking sports or something else. There's all sorts of things that could be happening to help support that family in the way they need at the time. And they do death notifications with us. They come out and are with us when we give bad news to families. This is a couple older pictures of some of our team. We've had consistently around 15 people since we started, and some just great people on the team over the years. And it froze again. Is it still going on Facebook?
We're about 10 minutes behind now.
It's a 10-minute delay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're froze again. We will see if it catches up with itself. In the meantime, do we have questions that we can take while the computer is deciding if it's going to function or not? Questions from the audience? Everyone's like, I had questions and now I don't know.
Can I get a cookie?
Yes, you can have a cookie. They're in the back of the room. Have two.
Dave,
Yeah.
one of those things, I'm in the building department, I did a lot of this. You can't bury a loved one on your property.
Yes, and so you can bury a loved one on your property. And so this is something that we deal with on a regular basis. State law passed 2010 that allows burial on private property. And usually we get to that part of the slideshow, but I'm not sure what it's going to do now. So you can do a private property affidavit to bury on your own land. We do have to come out at the time of burial, verify the location, make sure it's deep enough. Pretty much the county, we've gotten on board with the building department that you need to have 150-foot setbacks from a building, a property line, a well, a septic, reasonable setbacks. So if you have a teeny piece of property, it's probably not a good idea to do it, right? And then we come out, we do the GPS, we sign off on it, and then what it does is you get to record that with the county clerk, and then it is tied to the deed of your property. So when it goes to be sold, it's not a surprise to the new owners that there's a burial on the property. This used to happen way back in the day. We heard tons of it, where especially babies, stillbirth babies and stuff like that would be dug up while they were going to build a garage or something like that, and everyone would freak out. And you'd have to go do a full investigation, and more often than not, it was found that that was a legitimate death, that they buried the baby on their property. They had fetal demise certificates or death certificates, and everything was accurate. But there was no location or documentation of the baby's burial. And so that was always became a big thing, because a baby's grave is very easily not seen when they're going to go, and the next owners are like, oh my gosh, 2 owners ago, this happened. So this is where if you're going to do this, you have to have the proper documentation, and it's recorded on the property. So it's not a shock, and you're not going to want to build a garage over it or whatever. Okay? Is there any glitch left? Are you still glitched out?
Yeah, I think it's still because you're frozen on the camera.
Well, let's do this again. It won't even control alt delete, it's so froze.
That's a bad sign.
That is a great.
I don't know what it's doing, but we will find out. It flashed. Now it's got the spinning ball of death. Okay, it just says PowerPoint is not responding, and now it is responding.
No, it doesn't appear to be. It says
Let's
it
see
is.
if it catches up. All right, it's still going to think. Great times. Okay, other questions? Has anyone in here lost a loved one? Did you know what to do, or were you lost?
Unfortunately, I knew what to do.
Unfortunately, you knew what to do.
Yeah.
I guess you
And I'm
can
still
close
dealing with it
PowerPoint.
after 4 years.
Oh, close PowerPoint. Start it again.